Unifying Divided Minds in Black and White. We're going to be understanding each other to build connections in the workplace and beyond. And here's the things that we're going to learn today. We're going to understand the psychology of racial indoctrination, understand the hidden beliefs that we have as humans. You're going to see a lot of facts that's going to explain some things. You're going to get a lot of figures that's going to help to build your knowledge base. I am so big on information and facts and science and numbers. And numbers are something we can definitely rely on. So we're going to see a lot of that, as well as understanding the five keys that to have meaningful conversations with other races, and powerful strategies that conquer division and create unity. So this is good. I'm glad you can see this now. And before we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me because I think that's important. As you can see there, those are my four beautiful children. And so I am from the Midwest. I am from Wichita, Kansas. I was born and raised there. And when I grew up in a segregated school. So we hadn't had all of the laws that came into play until I was going into the third grade. So my first part of my elementary was in a segregated school. It was an all black school. And really, we lived in an all black neighborhood. So like many of you, you only know what you know as you grow up. And this is what I knew growing up. And then all of a sudden the laws changed. And they said we were going to be bused. They call it bust at the time, into another school district. And we had to go about 35 minutes away from where we were living. So riding the bus was something, when you could walk to the neighboring school, riding the bus was very meaningful, and it took a long time getting there, and the bus late, and so it was a lot of different dynamics. But it was a lot of different dynamics for everyone, because then when we got to our new school, we as kids, and I remember this like it was yesterday, everybody's looking at everybody like, wow. When I grew up back in the 60s and 70s, so TV didn't look like, we didn't have social media. I mean, come on. So all you knew is what your world looked like. And going to a school where I was there with white kids, they were here with black kids. I remember it was one other black person in my classroom. And coming from a segregated school, and so it's scary. It was a scary experience. And when I got there, race, age, and gender. Anytime you hear about anything that we're talking equality, it usually has to do with the primary dimensions of diversity. Now, there's other dimensions. I mean, we can go on to height, to a lot of things, to religion, to sexual orientation, and so many other dimensions. But these are the primary dimensions of diversity. What that means is that when somebody sees you, they have a belief about you based on your race, how old you are, and your gender. And all of us here on the call will know that you've experienced something in one of these categories, because that's the way people see you. And whatever they believe about any of these different dimensions, then that's how they respond and react. So we have a racial divide. So that's what we're talking about. Now, the racial pandemic hit, and now all the conversations started happening throughout the media, throughout the news companies. Everybody started calling. And what was not talked about before, people wanted to talk about it, because it's like, what is all of this about? Well, it's the belief that a race, but given the definition, is of human traits and all of that, there is one race because of the way that you look, or your face is shaped, or your nose, or whatever, is superior than another race. And it's a doctrine. And that's what we're going to talk about when we talk about the psychology of this. But it's political based. It's a doctrine or political based, and assumptions um, of racism and its principles. Now everybody was running from the word racist. Oh my God, I'm not racist. I have black friends. I have so, and then the conversations came, well, can black people be racist? I mean, it's so much conversation happening now. And I said, we all need to have a collective conversation and be educated. I believe that the more knowledge that you have, fear is high when knowledge is low. You're not going to be afraid when you have knowledge. I'm so calm in most every situation because I have a knowledge base, and that's what we're talking about today. So, racist is the prejudice, which I told you the primary mentions of diversity and what we prejudge people by, against, or you have agnostic toward a person or people based on their racial group. And it's typically because they're not as large in numbers and they're marginalized. So when we look at racism, now we're going to take a look at what systemic racism is, because we started talking about all of this when George Floyd happened. And that's really when everything just kind of blew. The world, I don't know if it was because we all were captured in our homes and the world had kind of closed down. I know here in Texas, we were closed down for 3 months. People weren't allowed, we really couldn't go places. And people found themselves like glued in front of a TV. Well, when this happened, everything just, so when I tell you my phone, it's just been amazing. And everybody's like, what do we do? How can we fix this? So the systemic racism is really embedded in normal practices within society or an organization. And the system is structured so that some people are disadvantaged and it creates disparity. That's what systemic racism is. And we heard that all last year in 2020. Well, is it really systemic racism? Is that, does it really exist, and all of these things? So we're going to be able to talk about it, and you'll be able to see. Um, it makes it more challenging for people of color to participate in the economy. How do we get here? So that was my thing. I said, if I can help people understand how we got here, then we can move in a different direction. And it's not about blaming, oh, this person, that person. All of us came into this world how it was. None of us we here on this call did not create any of this. We just learned how to operate in it. But if we understand how we got here, then we can understand what do we need to do and how can we make this better for everyone. So indoctrination is the process of teaching people or a group how to accept a set of beliefs. It all comes from when as we're growing old. And I told you my story. And we didn't have a teaching in my home because we grew up um, and because we were in all black neighborhoods, segregation. But I went to church, and we had white people that went to our church. So to me, people were people until I got in a situation where I felt like I was outnumbered, and people were looking at me like something was wrong, and that feeling. But then so I could ask my mother, what's going on, why is this happening, this is what happened, of course, at school and all of that. So now began the process of teaching, like, okay, so what does this mean, that we're just living in their world and we have to go by their rules? What does that look like? So I want you, as I'm saying these things, I want you to start thinking about your upbringing. What were you taught? The process of teaching a person to accept a set of beliefs. You fill people with ideas. This is what indoctrination is, with ideas, attitudes, or cognitive strategies or methodologies. And when you give people the thing that you want them to know and what you want them to believe and think about, and it becomes the process of indoctrination. And so psychology, and a part of what I do as well is understand how people, the cognition of your brain, how your brain processes information, and what that does to make you respond and react a certain way. So when I started digging deep in this, it's like, wow, none of us, none of us created these set of beliefs. But as you look at it, then what said I'm superior or I'm inferior? So, superior, that you're situated higher than another person, that you have greater rank. And then the inferior, so if you're taught to be superior, that this is where you are, this is who you are, this is what you gain. And as an African American, I was taught that I was basically inferior, not so much with academics or anything like that, but just the fact that you can have all of this because of this. So it's a little less important or a lower degree of rank or whatever it is. So you see the picture that I have here, and it's kind of like, hey, I'm bigger than you, I'm better than you, I get this and you get that based on all of these things. And we're going to look at what that's based on. So now I put this in here because as what I do in helping people understand their stress and emotions, you got to understand all about emotions. I wanted you to see the difference between a happy and a sad brain. And as we look at brain research, we know that our brains light up differently when you're happy, when you're sad. So emotions affect every piece of what you do. Our emotions are found in the limbic portion of the brain. We basically, as research is saying, and now sometimes research contradicts itself because it's hard for us to scientifically put this into place to say there are really only two emotions. But I like to use this because when we found out in some of the research that really there's two emotions and everything else goes from there, love and fear. So you're either love where the happiness, where the excitement, joy, any other feeling you have coming from love, and then you have fear. So we always think love and hate. No, it's love and fear. Fear then makes you have a feeling, and we're going to go into fear. And you're going to see where all of this is coming from that we're dealing with right now in our world, in our society. So, two emotions, remember that, love and fear. You can change the way you feel. That's the great thing about emotions. We all get to change the way that we feel. We just don't know how to do that. Emotions are buried, but they can be buried, but they're still alive down there. And you'll see that when we talk about the hidden belief. So when you think about your emotions, 75 to 90% of all your sickness and disease start with emotions and stress. And a lot of people are in, prior to not having anything to do with COVID, but a lot of people are in hospitals and sick because of their emotions and stress. If you do not deal with your emotions, and your stress is going to manifest itself in a physical way. Emotions are locked in our subconscious. I want you to understand this because when I show you the next slide, you're going to really understand. Emotions are critical to learning and memory. And there's a myth out there for the guys on the call that says men don't really have emotions and they don't feel. Yes, you do. You have emotions, you feel. You're just trained and indoctrinated to not share your emotions and express them like the females. And I know I have one son and three daughters. So when my son, when he hurt himself, for example, it's more or less like, okay, 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 you're gonna be all right. And your daughters, it's more like, oh, oh, it's gonna be okay. And promoting, you could go ahead and cry. For the guys, it's like, okay, we got to man up, shake it off. Let's do, and it's like society, we have indoctrinated the males to not share. And for a while there, the heart attack rate is higher in men because men do have learned and have been taught not to share. To you can't be crying in public. What does that look like? Just the different things. Don't share your emotions. Whereas females are taught to share the emotions. So I want to clear that up. Men do have emotions. We've just indoctrinated them in how they are to express that. And it's a lot of times it's killing. It's killing the men because they're keeping the stuff inside. Because again, your emotions and stress, if you don't manage them, then it will cause disease and sometimes death. Emotion is expressed through the body, your posture, your face. We all know that you can tell how somebody feels by the way that they're looking. Feelings are conscious perception of all of those changes happening in the body. And so I'm just kind of touching on this, and you'll see where I'm going because what we've been experiencing and what we see and experience when we talk about race is all on emotions. It's all on the feelings. It's all on whatever is inside of here. And I'm going to show you the emotion of fear. Now, we all know what love is and what love feels like and look like. But I want you to start understanding fear, because fear is what drives us not understanding each other. Fear is what drives us not being able to talk and to connect. Fear drives not being able to ask the questions. Fear drives, oh, I'm afraid of that those group of people or this group of people or that group of people, because I've heard that is this way, or I've learned that way. So the emotion of fear is an abnormal frustration, and it causes anxiety, worry, discouragement. As you see over here, all of the things that you can be afraid of: loneliness, marriage, bachelorhood, horses. I mean, the list could go on and on. Research says that fear, you got to get this, fear triggers about 1,400 known, these are the ones known, not the ones unknown, physical and chemical responses. And it activates over 30 different hormones in our body. Now, what you'll know about fear, if it's real or if it is false fear. It can be real fear, or it can be the fear that you create in your mind. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Your body's going to respond and react. What we see going on right now with the big divide is fear. And it activates all of these chemical responses, and it activates these different hormones. And then it's really hard. It's so hard to manage your emotions, to manage how you're feeling, any of those things. And it's causing the fear, then is what causes the anger, the hatred, the bitterness, the all of the other things that we have seen. So it's a lot, I know. So I wanted to take a pause because this was the first part. I just wanted to give you some grounding on where we're going and to help to shape the foundation. So I'm going to take a pause here and see if there are any questions or any comments thus far as we're moving through.
Doctor, can you talk a little bit more about the fear factor? Is that something that's instilled in childhood, developed over time? Where does the fear come from?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, yes, the fear. So, if you think about it, and if you have kids or you remember when you were a child, kids come here and they don't have fear. They will go jump in the water. They jump in the swimming pool. They'll run out in the street. They see a dog. They see a electrical outlet. There's no fear. There's no fear for the children. We teach them to be afraid. We will say, "Oh no, oh my God, no, you can't do that. That will hurt you. That will harm you. This will." And so we start, and of course, that's legitimate fear. Those are legitimate fears, but also the um, the false fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of things that cause us anxiety. We give it to our children. Oh no. So for instance, if it's something, oh, that person over there, because whatever they may look like, we don't want to talk to them. You have to be careful. Now we teach our kids not to talk to strangers, and that's a legitimate fear. But then oh no, we don't play with those children. We don't do this. We don't talk to them. Or this person is this way, or that person is that way. And if you just kind of start thinking about your own upbringing or how you've taught your children and what you taught them, and then it's like, okay, then they start to learn the learned behavior to be afraid. And it's like, I don't even know why I'm scared of you. It's like I'm scared. And I've heard so many people tell their stories, and they were like, yes, I was taught. And even if you are in, like, I was, not that my mother or that we were taught that we were inferior, but she did say, well, you're the minority in the world. It's not as many numbers, so you're not going to get the advantages. That's still a subtle way of inferiority. But because of my personality, I was determined that I'm gonna get stuff. Okay. But everybody's not like that. Then it became a personality thing. But when you think about, yes, how you were taught, and it's like, oh, you need to be careful. I was taught you have to do twice as much. They're gonna that example there. From there, it was like, you got to do twice as much. You got to be twice as good. You can't do this. You can't do that. So now that could bring anxiety to a person who doesn't have a personality like me that says, oh, okay, well, whatever I have to do, I'm going to prove and I'm going to show it. Most people are like, well, I'm afraid. And then I became afraid and say, well, the people in power are not going to let me do anything anyway. So why should I try? Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, it becomes this learn. And then you get in school, and I'm going to go through some of the places where we learn all of this stuff, where we learn fear, where we learn superiority, where we learn inferiority, even if your parents didn't teach it. Or in some cases, people were like, oh, my family, one of my dear friends, she said, well, my family, we didn't even really talk about race. She said, my mother taught me that everybody was all the same. When she got out in the world, she's like, well, Dr. Gladney, I didn't know it was like this. And I'm like, yeah, I said, you had a mother that was conscientious and was able to tell you that everybody was the same. I said, but most people were not raised like that. So yes, the answer, I know that was quite a kind of a long answer to that, but yeah, I wanted to give you examples of how it is a learned behavior. This fear, we fear the things that we don't know anything about or what we've heard, and we take it in and it becomes our hidden belief. That's a good question. Okay, any other questions?
Hey, Doc, Stanford Yacht Club here. You mentioned the emotional breakdown, not breakdown, but the emotions between a male and a female. As a female leader, would any advice on how to kind of break through to our men, just to, male leaders or male line level employees to kind of make it a better relationship overall?
Well, yeah. Well, so the when you're in the work, and of course, even as women are taught not to really be showing their emotions at work, because it's well, and I help people to manage them. We all have feelings. We all have emotions. I encourage, because I will say, men, I know you feel. You have the same emotion. You're a human. We all are made the same. Obviously, we all are made the same on the inside. Our brain, now I can go really deep into the brain, and the male and female brain is different. And the limbic portion of the brain for the female is bigger, which means we're going to have even that many more emotions. Um, so there is a distinction there. But in working with men, I always say, hey, it's okay. I want you to know that I know that even if I don't see it on your face, because it's so great. And men, I have to give it to you, because the indoctrination for the emotions, you men can sit up there and you can't see anything on their face. And they're sitting there, and I'll be speaking in front of these audiences and doing all this stuff. And I'm looking at the men and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, they're not enjoying this. And they'll come up to me afterwards and shake my head. Oh my God, this was the best thing. So I have learned that I'm not going to try to read their face. They really have poker faces. And so the thing, Alex, that you can say is that the awareness, letting men understand, I know that you have emotions, you just express them differently. But as you're managing somebody and as you're leading them, you can ask the questions, because emotions then make a person feel a certain way. So you get to the feeling. Well, how does this feel for you? Does this feel like it's a good decision? Are you having, and so you tap more into the feeling part of it, because the emotion some kind of way, and I'm not going to be able to erase that. The stigma that's attached to emotions is emotional, and some kind of way we made that negative, and we made it for women. And it's like, oh, she's too emotional, or this is too emotional. Women can't do this because of all their emotions. And it's really not a negative thing. I tell people it's really all about the feeling. And so you as a leader acknowledging that I know you feel some sort of way about this. I probably can't tell by your face, but I would like to know. And then men are very logical. So I love hearing what they have to say, because I have a lot of logic going on. And I've been accused of not having emotion and not showing it, because I learned to manage them. So when you are talking to a man, and then just say, okay, so am I looking at this differently? What is the logical? How do you think? So their brains are very strategic. And that logic just kind of kicks in. And I just love it that they can just get to the solution really quickly. We have to feel. So all of us need to learn how to appreciate the differences. So the women bring the feeling and the men bring the logic. If we can, um, integrate that together, and so that it is a balance there. So that's what I would say to the men. Men, can you vouch for anything to what I'm saying? Are y'all saying this is right? Am I on the right track for you?
I think so.
Okay, okay, okay,
Oh.
great, great. Okay, any other question?
So just not to hog the time, but to following up on how you're learning these things necessarily, why do you think it is that men are taught to suppress those feelings or to not have that emotional reaction to things, like, whereas women feel more comfortable having those reactions?
Good question. I have learned that it's come from way back in the day. Men were taught to go to work, you got to provide for your family. This is what you do. You don't really get involved. It's just from our culture here, definitely here in America. And it's like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you do it. I'm gonna teach you how to be a man. So what happens in families is children learn by seeing, not necessarily what you tell them, but by seeing. That's what they saw. The dad goes out, he makes the money, back this is back several decades ago, but he makes the money, he does this, and this is how a man is supposed to be. And so every man, okay, there's a manly thing you're not supposed to. It's again the indoctrination. So your father passed it on, his father, and you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I didn't grow up in a very affectionate household. My dad never told me he loved me." Any of those kind of things, because it just wasn't a man thing to do. And I'm here to break some of these cycles, so that people can understand. Yes, and I tried to when I saw that I was doing that with my son, is to learn it's okay, son, you know what, I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing. And even as a teacher, I didn't want the little boys in the class to cry. I was like, why are you crying? Because it denoted that you're weak and you're not strong. And because that's out there and it's pervasive in our society, then no man wants to seem like he's weak. That's going to go against your ego, your manliness. And I understand all of that. So we all have kind of bought into that kind of thing. And so I'm trying to change it. And we can as leaders by saying, hey, guys, and men on the call, you feel, so you can say, hey guys, we do have some feeling. And now it's kind of cool. Now they got bromances and brotherly love. And there's a lot of stuff out there that makes it feel like, oh, it's cool to be, I can hug you, man. Can I hug you? And they got all of this extra stuff. But that wasn't before. And I think our millennials and the generations coming up, they're more emotional and feeling, oh my goodness, they got too many feelings and emotions, but that's a whole nother deal. That's not what we're doing today. But yeah, so that's where it has come from. So we're trying to disrupt that cycle. So good questions, good questions. Okay, this is great. I'm going to move on so we can look at where we got all these beliefs. Intentional and hidden beliefs. Intentional beliefs are the consciousness and the deliberate part of your mind. Their mind right now, you're conscious, you're on this call, you're listening to me, you're doing some thinking, you're learning, you're processing, and you're very, very deliberate. So you're right here. And we talk about intentionality and consciousness. It's all about the mindfulness right now, that you're here in the moment. Now, that's good. But let me tell you where most things happen in our hidden beliefs, our subconscious. Our subconscious is where it's in charge of our emotions, our memories, your core beliefs and values. So it's also responsible for right now, we're breathing, we're not counting our breaths, your heart rate, your blinking. We have no control over that. It's all just what happens subconsciously, and we don't really even know that it's happening. So we have intentional beliefs and we have hidden beliefs. Now you see that your memories, your core beliefs, and values come from your hidden beliefs. Now, I'm going to show you. We've all seen this, the conscious mind and subconscious mind. Knowing that your intentional beliefs is your conscious mind is 10%, 90% is your subconscious. Your unconscious mind is 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. I want you all to sit with that for a minute, because when you understand that and you go back to how you were trained, what you were taught, just even, and then we say in development that by the time you're 6 you have your your personality and who you are and all that. But if you start thinking about, even as an adult, what you learned, what you've been taught, what you've seen, all of the things, it's in your subconscious. It gets down there and it becomes a part of your belief system, your core values, 30,000 times more powerful. And sometimes, and I'm telling you, with all of this that's happened over the last 2020, people were saying, Dr. G, I didn't even know I felt like this. I didn't even know I thought this. Because you know why? It wasn't in their conscious mind. It was something that was hidden down. So now this is going to help you understand you, other people. It helps me understand myself all the time. I'm always doing the introspectiveness and saying, okay, why am I thinking that? Where did that come from? But it's powerful. So now we're going to look at the beliefs about black and white, and you can kind of say, oh yeah, yeah, these are some of the more prominent beliefs that people have. So what do people believe, and what were you taught about black people? Skin color makes you better or worse. Um, Lazy, that black people are lazy. They don't like to work. They're criminals. A lot of them are. You see how many of them are in jail. You see how many of them will kill somebody or do something. They're angry people. They're upset. They're mad. They just want handouts. How many of them are on welfare, and how many of them are getting, government aid? They're guilty before proven innocent. And they like the welfare system. So you start thinking about, yeah, and I'm going to tell you where these beliefs come from. Some of this is subconscious, and we don't even know. Now, what the beliefs about white people were: skin color makes you better or worse, that all white people are racist, all white people are afraid of black people, they're privileged, they can get anything, they're innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. There's a system that if you can't get into this good old boy system, that you're not going to be able to make it, and that maybe one or two people can get there, and that they control the world. So these are the beliefs, the more prominent beliefs that are about these two particular races. And it's like, really, this is really interesting. It's like, okay, so you can look and say, well, yeah, some of this I believed some of it, growing up and in this world. Yes, of course. The thing that makes us change is when you can be so authentic with yourself and say, wow, yeah, you know what? I bought into that. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to buy into it, because again, all of us just came here. We didn't create this world. We just came here and been trying to learn how to live in it. So where does this come from? Where do these beliefs come from that we have? The history that we're taught. Now, we were taught a different history when we were in the all black schools, and then they continued to put in history. Um, well, when we got integrated, then there was no more black history. There was no more anything, because you had all these black teachers teaching what they knew. Now you didn't. So the history books left out parts, but history taught you whatever. You learned it from your homes. You learned it from the school. You learned it from your churches. You learned it from the government. You learned it from the media. Most everything, even bigger than your school and your church and your government, is the media. Is media driven. It's what we see on TV, what we hear. We learned it from the judicial system, because then we can point back and say, well, look at that. This is where these beliefs are coming from. And so you start thinking like, wow, yeah, we're just like the little kids. We're sponges. And we just take in some of this stuff. We see some of it. We may not know, because we may not be intentionally believing it, but it gets suppressed some kind of way in your subconscious. And so we look at that, and then we have microaggression. So this is really something, because this has only been talked about probably in the past 7, 8 maybe 10 years. They've been talking about microaggressions and hidden beliefs. And I wanted to give you all what this means. So when you hear somebody talk about microaggressions, they're talking about it's three different types. So micro assaults, that's obvious discrimination, discriminating behavior that people will have. That's just pure prejudice and it's overt. And so the cashier may skip over a black customer in line, or somebody telling a racist joke, or wearing a shirt with Confederate flag on it, or something that says, hey, this is who I am, this is what I believe. Those are called micro assaults. Then you have the micro insult, where it's unconscious. And this is where your unconscious belief system, all of us have that. It's unconscious, and you don't even know. And I experienced this so much when I was working on my doctorate, and I was at the University of Oklahoma. And so, of course, it's not what it's only 4% of African Americans that have a PhD, and I was a woman getting it. So then, it made really less. But they would say, oh, but you're not like everybody else. I was a different kind of Black person. That's called a micro insult. Somebody thinks they may be complimenting you. It's like you just speak so well, because their hidden belief is that Black people don't speak well. Black people shouldn't be smart. I'm different. Like, how am I different? Okay, okay. So that's a micro insult. And then you have the third one is micro invalidations. Again, it's unconscious. And example is when people say, I don't see color. I'm colorblind. I don't teach my children color. And you're going, okay. So what happens is that's an insult or invalidation, because you're saying, I don't see you. Now, we talked about the three primary dimensions of diversity. You see me, and you know that I'm a Black woman. You know that that I'm a woman, and you know that You don't know how old I am. That you don't know, but you may think, okay, she's 45. No. I love to play with the age thing, but I'm just saying that's what you think. And so when you're saying I don't see color, you're saying I don't see you. I'm not recognizing that you're different. Please recognize, know that yes, you do see it. Whether you say you see it or not, you do see it, because that's what our mind goes. And when you say that, it kind of minimizes, or people say, oh, racism doesn't exist. That's old. That was back in the day. Get over that. The slavery thing. Stop. When you do that, it's invalidating. And, I can go into all of the psychological damage. I mean, that was done through all the stuff, but it's just, that's a lot. That's real heavy stuff. And I'm like, okay, you can't get over stuff if you didn't ever get the help, if you never got therapy, if you never, so it just keeps going from generation to generation to generation. And so that's what's called the micro invalidation. So when you hear people talk about that, you will know exactly what they mean, because that's becoming really big, the microaggressions. But it really gets and speaks down to the hidden belief system, and people don't even realize it. And it was, even this summer we had some protests and things like this, and one of the businesses were destroyed. And so me and my daughter went to volunteer to help clean up. And while we were there, it was one of the Black businesses. And while we were there, it was a whole group. We walked in, and it was filled with Caucasian, with white people. And I was like, I was shocked. But one of the companies here had brought in their whole team. And when I tell you they had cleaned everything up by the time we had gotten there, it was supposed to be a few hours. And as we started the conversation, and the first thing he said, there was the president of the company, he said, it was of a bank. And he said, well, let me tell you right now, I don't see color. So I just said, okay, and he said, now, is that wrong? And I said, well, let me just tell you what it says. So let me help you. So we had such a conversation. Of course, they brought me in to do the training and whatever for their company. Who knew I was going down? I had a broom in my hand. I was going down just to help clean up all the after effects of all of this negative fear and all the stuff going on. And he was like, well, yeah. So we had this conversation and he was like, wow, you really enlightened me. He said, I thought that was a good thing. I said, no, it's not. But you have to be taught. This is the whole point. You educate yourself, then you know. And when you know better, you do better. It's just really that simple. So that's an example of the micro um, invalidations. Now I want you to I'm going to ask you some questions. I don't know if you'll be able to. I don't know how we'll be able to do it. Oh, I guess I can say you could type in the chat if this has ever happened to you. Just say yes. So have you ever been followed in a store because somebody thought you were going to steal something? If you haven't, then you don't have to type no. You could just, if it's happened to you, just type yes in the chat, and they'll tell me if they'll be able to tell me because I haven't even looked at the chat. Okay, is that maybe? Okay, I see you said maybe, Matt. Okay, um, okay, Frederick, you said yes. Okay, have you ever been called a racial slur? If you have, just type in yes. Have you ever been denied a job because of your race? Now you'll say, well, how would I know that? You know, it's so obvious. Just like when I was in the third grade and I knew I was better, we have to read the parts out loud to the whole class. And I'm just like, oh, and he just read the part, didn't get the job. Um, Denied a bank loan because of your race, stopped for no reason by the police. Okay, I'm looking to see some of the answers. Okay, stopped for no reason by the police, afraid your child will be killed by a cop, told you were different than others in your race, talk to your children about not getting killed if they are stopped by the police. Someone was afraid of you when you got on the elevator. You're being ignored by a clerk or skipped over in a line. Oh, let me go back. Okay, now I'm going to look to see. Okay, I see some yeses. Okay. Um, Matty, is that Matty? Is that how you say your name? And I see James said yes. Friedrich said yes. Okay. Um, Matt, do you want to share which one it was for you? Do you mind? Maddie, can you guys unmute her or him? Is it MAT? Tell me how to pronounce that.
Yes, here I am.
Matt, there you go.
Okay. Oh, okay, I see you. Okay.
It happened to me a few years ago. I was actually doing some paint job at my house, and I was not dressed so nice. And I went to the bank because I needed to deposit a check, and I needed some cash, and I needed some other services. And I had to wait a little bit. That was an interesting situation, and it was all judged by my appearances, by my dirty clothes, because I had paint on
Mm-hmm.
my clothes.
Okay. Okay. So that didn't feel great. I know. James, how about you? Do you want to share? And then I have Friedrich.
Sure. Mine was in response to the elevator. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", 285 pounds or so. So I have an intimidating look to me.
Mm-hmm.
So automatically I'm judged as, a threat to some people because of my size necessarily.
Okay. 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 And that makes you feel like, what do you do to compensate for that?
There's not much. I mean, I can't shrink, right? So
I know. Do you smile and say,
but
hello? What do you do? How do you?
No, I try to be as friendly as possible and be the first one to make a move, to be outgoing, to disarm anyone and kind of show them that I'm more of a bigger teddy bear than a threat. But at the same time, you can't change your stature. So there's not much you really can do, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. So that's that secondary dimension of diversity. Okay. And Friedrich, you want to share?
Well, it's more about um, denied a job or rate of pay or anything. I realized that several years ago, I worked in a hotel and got less than half the money paid than my coworker. And when I went and addressed it with human resources and my boss, I was told, if you don't like it, go back to your country.
Wow. And what did you say? What was your response? Did you have a response for that?
Well, I'm still here.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, I know, I'm glad you're still here, but how did you try to educate them? Did you just
No,
ignore it? What
that-
did you do? Okay. You know, there's systemic racism, there's racism. Because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening to people. And so this kind of gives you that information there. And now we're going to talk about something that this blew up over. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Dr. Gladney, just a question came in as you were talking through some of those microaggressions. The question was, how does what you're teaching differ, or is it the same as critical race theory?
It's similar. It's very similar. The whole thing is my teaching. I'm trying to help people to get to a place where we can have those conversations. A lot of people aren't familiar, and people are not reading the books that they should, and understanding it from a theoretical place. But it's also very similar. You know, when I'm telling you, we all just kind of banded together this summer, and it was like, wow, now is the time to have the conversations that we couldn't. Now is the time to teach from a theoretical place of point, from a psychological place of point, so that people can educate themselves on, you know, the people that want to know, how do we get here? Most people just want to know, how do we fix it? But I think it's difficult to fix something when you don't really know how broken it is, you know. So you need to understand, the pipes burst in 4 or 5 different places. This is how we're going to have to do it. And so yeah, so it's kind of all in encompassing and the same, if you will, because we all are looking at it and saying, and even as Black people, we're not educated enough because we're experiencing things. So we don't have to feel like we have to do the work. I do the work because I'm trying to teach everybody else and other people and learning what it is that we need to do. But for the most part, it's like, well, okay, well, this is happening to me all the time. So why is it that am I going to need to understand, you know, what Dr. Gladney is talking about with the critical race theory, what, you know, all of the cast. I got the book Cast, from understanding way back where all of this has come from, the caste system and things. So yeah, that's kind of the difference in there. Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Who is Black Lives Matter? You guys started hearing about this, and it became the most negative, most unbelievable thing that started happening. I wanted to give you some information. It was founded in 2013 because of Trayvon Martin's murder. And if you guys remember, Trayvon was the young man who was killed from getting the Skittles at the store, and all of this stuff started happening. So there was a foundation that happened, that the mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power. And it became a global network. And it is a Black-led organization that supports Black-led movements. 2 ladies started it, and it was like a foundation, and it became a movement. And of course, over the last 7 years, it's become misrepresented. It's become all the negative. It came to be because it seemed like the Black lives did not matter, because they could get shot in the street and it didn't matter if they were killed. And actually, I remember the Rodney King beating and all of the stuff. I remember all of this stuff. And it's just like, well, it don't matter if Black people get shot. So the message was that we matter, because the word TOO wasn't at the end, then it became just this polarizing thing. Black Lives Matter too. They just put Black Lives Matter. I think putting a two on the end also would have helped probably some people, but they weren't thinking about that. They're like, Black Lives Matter. Hey, we matter. Why do Black Lives Matter? I explain it like this, and this helps you understand. When you see there are two houses on the street, one house is on fire and one is not. So when they call the fire department, which house do you want them focusing on? The one that's not on fire or the one that is on fire? Well, Black lives feel like, Black people feel like our lives are on fire and it needs some help and it needs the attention. So you can understand it in that sense. Like, yeah, well, so that house over there is good right now. It's not on fire. So we don't need to have attention on it. The one where the fire is needs to be put out. So why do Black Lives Matter? Here's their concerns: systemic racism, housing, loans, pay wealth, education, incarceration, the judicial system, police brutality, the Crown Law, living while Black. Crown Law is probably the only thing you haven't heard of, which is the law that Black women can wear their hair in its natural state. And you're thinking that's just doesn't even make any sense, but it's against the law in most places. That and companies and jobs were could fire people. Kids in school were getting put out because they had their hair either in braids or just whatever. So you just think we seem like we came far, but then it's like, what? You can't wear your hair like you can wear your hair? So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to highlight a few, but I told you I'm a statistician. I do believe in facts. When you can present facts to people, people don't respect each other. They don't respect that you have a different viewpoint, that you have a different experience. So I'm going to give you the respect and look at you as a person. While I may be looking at the primary dimensions of diversity, I will respect you. That's where the color comes in. I respect the difference. I respect the difference in your gender. I respect the difference in your age. All of this, it fits in the same category because we prejudge people based on. So we're not respecting them. We're not respecting each other. So you got to give respect to get respect. And when you respect people, it opens up something completely different. The next, the act of giving the attention, the next, empathy. And this is something, and I keep saying, can you teach people really empathy? I try. It's being able to put yourself and look through somebody else's glasses. And hopefully I was able to do that today with some of the experiences and some of the things that we all have different experiences. And when you can look through the lens of somebody else and imagine, what if that were me? What if I did have to talk to my kids and say, Mom, I'm scared to drive today. I was so scared for my son because I know his personality and I know, and I was like, baby, if this happens, this is what you have to do, please. I mean, just understand that may not be your story, but that's somebody's story. And being able to walk in your neighbor's shoes, even though, you don't want to, but to be able to put yourself there and imagine that empathy. When you come to somebody with empathy, and even if you're asking a question, people can tell if you really empathize and say, you know what, I can't imagine because that's not my story, that's not my life, but I want to learn. Then that brews a real conversation, the attitude in which you come. When we talked about fear, we talked about, fear brings about anger, hatred, bitterness, a bunch of stuff. People have a lot of negative attitudes. And when you see the beliefs about Black people that they're angry, yes, they're angry. And, you see the protest and all that stuff, even though they weren't meant to be, what it is, but it was anger, it was burning, it was all of this stuff. And I knew that was going to happen. That's how history, and it feels like when you feel like somebody's not listening to you, you're going to make them listen. And so all this attitude, and then because they're angry, these people get angry, and everybody's mad. And I'm just like, oh my God, I want to fix everything I can, but the attitude in which you look at things. And so I've tried to be able to understand how somebody else is. And so what somebody else was taught and what their hidden beliefs may be, so that I can really have a conversation. But you come together with a positive attitude and saying, you know what, we're going to be able to work this out because we're going to be able to talk through this. Um, Listen, don't listen to speak, listen to understand. I used to give out these listening tests when I do all of these trainings and whatnot. You know what, people, we're not taught to listen. We're just not taught to listen. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we're supposed to speak. Most people listen to speak. I can't wait to say what I want to say. And when they get finished, I'm going to say no, because that's not. And we have all this defense stuff going on instead of listening to understand. So I listen a lot more than I speak, believe it or not, because I can understand where somebody's coming from. I hear their heart, I hear their feelings. And I'm like, wow, this is where they got there. I get it. So if I can do anything, and if you can do anything to bridge this, to help manage the people that you work with, to be able to create an environment that is safe, then learning to listen. And then, you give attention and consideration. And the last piece is love. Now, I told you about the two emotions. We have fear and we have love. Love is not so much that I'm going to tell you that you need to love, to fall in love with somebody, but this is a love of humanity, love of people, love of all of us wanting to get along, love of concern, the brotherly love, the love that we see that comes together when disasters happen and people get together and they giving to each other. We all have that capacity. So we want to have that same capacity when we're trying to have these conversations and understanding. When you're trying to manage people, when you're working with people and you're saying they're different than me, their experience is different, they are a different gender, they're a different race. And I was taught the hidden belief that they're angry, that they're lazy, that they don't, all of that. And I'm trying to help you understand. A lot of times, a lot of the attitudes of the people are like, I can't win. I can't. The people keep pushing me down. I feel this. And so me trying to help motivate people to get to a different place, because I love humankind. And I believe that we all can get so much further together by loving each other. So we're going to look at the ways to create unity very quickly. How can you create unity? Have conversations that matter. I just went through respect, empathy, attitude, listen, and love. Have conversations. So if you have a question that with your colleague, with somebody that you're leading, that you're managing, don't be afraid to ask the question. Have the conversation that matter to say, hey, I don't understand and I want to understand. Do you feel like helping me understand? And that's a real good way to open up conversations. Acknowledge there is a problem. You understand. I tried to give you facts and figures. Determine that you're going to be a part of the solution. Speak up for justice when you see something not done correctly, somebody being skipped over, somebody, it's like, look, and that's so easy when you're standing in line. That happens a lot. I'm going to speak up. But a lot of people will just sit there. They say, I don't want to get involved. They see something wrong. They don't say anything. Definitely speak up for justice. Care. Have a care. Seek to learn. Fight to change laws if that's the kind of person that you are, and help to change other people's perspective. By the more that you know, you can help other people. So be the change that you want to see. What does that look like? I'm going to leave you with some, we're going to take some questions, but let me leave you with some, with a plan and how you can help. To reach out to your friends and other races, have dinner, go to dinner with somebody. Now that it's opening up a little bit more, our worlds are. Watch 13. This is a documentary. I'm telling you, it'll blow your mind. This will give you some more information. It's called 13, the 13th Amendment. And I've watched it 2 or 3 times now, because it's to help with the give us the education that's needed in our system and how it's built. So now we'll know what to do. Seek cross-cultural relationships, donate to fight injustice, pledge to be anti-racist. And you can always follow me on all of these places.